I am about to fly to Alaska tomorrow morning to go chop some wood. It's going to be one of the more manly adventures of my life. We're going to an off-grid cabin.
What?
Just going out to an off-grid cabin to chop some wood. Just on its surface sounds like a very manly vacation.
To give you a little bit of clarification, we weren't just going to chop wood. We were also going to visit with my parents and see for the first time something that they have had in the works since, I believe, 2020. Owen and I have been to Alaska multiple times since we were originally there in 2021 to record our series Lost and Found. And even though we've gone to Alaska multiple times, somehow, because we've just been elsewhere in the state, we have not seen the cabin that my parents and my brother and sister-in-law have built by hand since 2021. That cabin has honestly been such a big part of our family since then, and it just was kind of insane that we had yet to see it for our own eyes. And this just kind of felt like a unique opportunity. Owen and I, it's the tail end of the summer. We had a free couple of days. And I believe I've mentioned this before. When we hear a good opportunity, we are not ones to pass it up. So we were really excited to follow my parents up to Alaska to help them prepare the cabin for winter, to visit with them, see their handiwork, help with some projects around the house, and maybe, just maybe, if we were lucky enough, to see the Aurora for the first time in its full glory.
Welcome to Fairbanks. Arrival time is approximately 4:30. Please keep your seatbelts on. Our pilots will turn off the seatbelt sign when it's safe to get out. Your belongings should remain completely stowed until we have to.
It's really hard to describe the feeling of seeing my family's cabin for the first time in person. So Owen and I, when we were up in this part of Alaska back in 2021 filming our series, it was just pylons in the ground. Absolutely nothing else had been built on top of it. And to show up and to see this full-blown cabin that is honestly bigger than it kind of reads to me in the pictures that my parents have obviously shown us over the years while they've been building it. And it's just also so wild to walk into this building that is way out in Alaska and to see all of this furniture that I absolutely am familiar with in this environment that I am absolutely not familiar with. It's just kind of this wild feeling. It was just so remarkable to know that they had built this place by hand. My parents are incredibly handy. And to give you a little bit of insight, my family, my dad was in the Army. We moved all the time. And my sense of home is less tied to an actual building and more so the things that are inside of it. So to me, a place always felt like home just when our stuff was there. And then, if it wasn't, as soon as we moved out and the furniture was no longer in that space, it just never really felt like my space. So home has always been related more so to furniture than anything for me. And so to walk into this space and for it to be just filled with all of these things that I had memories attached to was very special. When facing the back of the cabin, it's all glass windows, raw wood, and a wood-burning stove. And the view overlooks a mountain in the distance with a deep valley in front of you, kind of dropping the land away. And at this time of year in the fall, it's a mix of deciduous trees and conifers. There's a fair bit of Sitka spruce and white spruce, along with paper birch and aspen trees. So it was kind of a mix of gold and then green going off into the distance. And every morning, the valley down below was usually socked in with fog. And it kind of just looked like this undulating ocean that as the day went on would sometimes dissipate. But in the fall, it's so wet. So a lot of times it would stick around all day. But my parents, some of the projects that they needed help with was moving this large pile of wood from the back of the house to the front of the house, then taking that wood, splitting that wood, and getting it into a new woodshed that we had to finish building.
Woo.
So we spent our first couple of days in Alaska with them, helping chip away at these projects. And I had never chopped wood before. Turns out I really like it.
Nice.
I really enjoyed it. After the first day, I had a blister in my palm, but it didn't really stop me. I just think it's really satisfying when you can finally get your axe to travel all the way through a piece of wood. I actually really just enjoyed that project in general because those trees had been felled earlier in the year to create a fire line. There had been a forest fire in the area, and so they needed to put enough space between the house and the tree line just to ensure that the house would be safe in the event that the fire came up that close. And so all of it had been kind of cut into these big sections and then just needed to be broken down even further to then dry in the wood pile. But because these trees had been laying there for a while, every time we moved one, we would see all these crazy funguses and molds, and I mean, just of the colors and shapes and varieties, the likes I personally have never seen. And obviously, this is more insight into the type of person that I am. I spent a great deal of time taking pictures of all of the molds and funguses that were on these logs. So it was kind of fun to just spend the day meditating on moving this wood through the process. Ultimately, all of those projects took the first 3 days that we were in Alaska. And then finally things slowed down enough that we were able to sit down and have some conversations with my parents about all they've accomplished here in Alaska.
So I feel like the first thing I wanted to ask you all was, what attracted you to Alaska?
Well, I think, of course, getting to Alaska was always kind of on our bucket list of places to visit. But when the opportunity came, we have a group of friends that we like to take cruises to different places. And we'd been to several cruises in the Caribbean. And everybody that we had ever met that had taken an Alaska cruise, well, actually, you know what? We need to start back at the beginning, because when I first got in the Army, from the day I got in the Army, I asked to be assigned to Alaska.
Are you serious? I didn't know that.
From the very day I got in.
Never got it.
Never got it. It was the
Rude.
Only location. I had 3 places.
Got to Hawaii.
Yeah, that's true.
We wanted to go to Germany. We wanted to go to Hawaii. We wanted to go to Alaska. And they never sent us to Alaska. So it's always been kind of back there in the back of our heads of places to go. And then with all the cruise group, we felt like we were kind of doing the same thing over and over again with going to the Caribbean. And we talked the group into doing an Alaska cruise. And to be honest,
Arms had to be pulled.
They were not
twisted.
highly motivated, but they went out of, I think, just curiosity, if not, because we kind of goaded them into doing it. But, and fell in love. It was just beautiful.
So was that before Eric was stationed here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You will hear me mention Eric and Julie many times, so I think a proper introduction is in order. Eric is my brother, and Julie is my bonus sister, also known as a sister-in-law. They both are in the military and were stationed here in Alaska for a few years and were heavily involved in the building of this cabin.
How long before Eric was stationed here? I can't
Maybe
remember what that
2 or
timeline
3
is.
years ago. Two
Yeah,
or
probably
3
about 2 years,
before.
maybe.
Something like that. Relatively close. And then when we came to visit Eric, and he said, land in Alaska is cheap. And we're like, well, how cheap?
How cheap we talking?
And so we just kind of casually, out of curiosity about how cheap it really was or not, we started looking around, and then we're like, okay, that's not bad.
Maybe this is feasible.
And so we sent Eric and Julie links from Zillow to go out and look at different pieces of land. I mean, I don't know that we knew if we wanted land or if we wanted land with something on it.
Yeah, we kind of
just
debated,
looking.
and we were surprised at how many pieces of property that were out there that had no road access. And some would even say only accessible by water or like by a river or a lake, or only accessible during the winter, meaning by snow.
Right. I was going to say, I
Because
feel like
the snow
this
machine-
area
Yeah, it's just
is
crazy.
just a swamp out here.
And we knew that that was probably unrealistic to look at something that was that remote. We needed at least road access.
Yeah. But have you always had an interest? I feel like I remember you have always had an intrigue about building something yourself.
Well, you know, I had on my, when I say bucket list, we're not just throwing out a figurative thing. Back in, gosh, the late 1990s, the unit I was assigned to, one night we had all the officers over to the house, and I had them all write their top 10 bucket list. And I kept it, and a lot of them I sent that I kept touch with, I sent them an email with the list of their bucket list and say, how you doing on your list? Well, we uncovered our list, I don't know, several times. Every time we moved, just about, we'd come back across. And sitting right there on the bucket list, for me anyway, was design and build a log cabin.
It was not on my bucket list.
Well, okay. Shocking. So, Mom, I did want to ask, being the warm weather lady that you are, I'm assuming also you were not necessarily feeling probably as intrigued by Alaska as Dad was.
No, I thought the cruise was fantastic. It's a great introduction for anybody who wants to go to Alaska, but they don't really know where to go,
begin.
what to do, where to begin, because you get a taste of everything. And I thought it was beautiful, and I was looking forward to coming and seeing, you know, Eric and all that. And in my wildest dreams, never thought that we would do this, because I don't like the cold. So, and here we sit in Alaska.
But have you enjoyed this process?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
the process being going from a cruise to having one of your children live here to buying land to literally building a house from
yes,
scratch.
I like a challenge, and
do
I thought
you?
it was yes, I do. And I thought it was a cool challenge. There's a lot of logistics because everything we own is in Florida, and we didn't have anything up here. And how are we going to get stuff here? And what does it even look like?
For context, Shelby and her husband, Mike, are friends of Eric and Julie's. They still live here, and we visit with them whenever we happen to be in town.
Last night, Shelby said, she asked me something about, you know, after you bought the land, you know, what did you think? And I said, after we bought the land and the people built the cabin, there were no windows and there were no doors. And I thought, in my mind, you're like, okay, they're gonna make this structure for us. And there'll be walls inside and all this stuff. And even though you know that it wasn't going to be that way, it was a little overwhelming when those people drove away.
and you're
I was
like,
just
this is what we're left with. The rest is what I have to do.
Exactly. And then it was, you know, just figuring it out. But, you know, the whole reason that we went on the Alaska cruise, too, is because we didn't want to repeat the same thing over and over.
Yeah.
We're doing that a little bit here, but there is a lot to explore in Alaska. I mean, we haven't even scratched the surface because all we've been doing is building this.
Yeah.
So I think it's a little bit different, you know.
Oh, it's
and then,
totally different.
you know, because we can go from here and go wherever in Alaska.
Yeah, it's a good launching point. Good launching point for sure.
But yeah, the cold is a bit of a problem, but
We're managing.
yeah, I mean, I got coats.
Yeah, no bad weather, just bad equipment.
That's right. That's right.
What's the coldest it's been while you guys...
Yeah, what's the coldest?
Here at the cabin or here in Alaska?
The coldest it's been since, I guess for you also.
Negative 20, I think, is the coldest we've had while being here in the cabin.
But at Eric's, when we
Yeah,
were
we had
visiting,
negative 40.
No, it was negative 50,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah, because
frightening.
this area of Alaska has one of the biggest temperature swings because it can be 100 degrees in the summer, and
Yeah.
we have experienced that end of the spectrum. And then in the winter, it can be down to negative 60, which I believe Eric has said he's been out in the field for.
Yeah. And I think if you're not outside and those negative temperatures for like long periods of time, like for a field exercise or something, like if you're just going to feed the chickens, you can go in your bathrobe and your slippers. It all, after what negative,
It all feels the same,
after 0, it all feels the same,
which is cold.
which is cold.
This episode of Camp Nowhere is brought to you by Red Arc. For the last 4 years on the road, our entire life has been running on Red Arc's power management systems. Whether we're charging our camera gear, powering Starlink for remote work, or making this podcast in the middle of nowhere, Red Arc always keeps everything running smoothly. They've spent decades perfecting their products based on customer needs, putting in countless hours to design and test the toughest mobile power solutions out there. Born in the rugged terrain of Australia, Red Arc has been leading the way in mobile power solutions for 45 years. For more information about reliable off-grid power, go to headnowhere.com/redarc, which can also be found in the show notes. Hey there, Mac here. I don't know why I said that. It's always Mac. Anyways, if you're enjoying Camp Nowhere, maybe you would want to consider checking out our Patreon. By joining, you'll get access to a ton of cool things, such as the ad-free version of this podcast, early screenings to our films, behind-the-scenes glimpses into life on the road, and a whole lot more exclusive content. Plus, your support helps us keep creating and improving as multifaceted storytellers. We legitimately could not do it without you, so a big thank you to everyone who has already joined us in our sunny little corner of the internet. If you're curious, take a spin around at headnowhere.com/Patreon. See you there.
Well, since being here, I feel like I have to tell you that this place already has a feeling to it, much like the beach house did. That Bubbles and Poppy had.
What do you attribute that to?
Well, it just feels like a place that I know people will want to gather. And I think that that was what was so special about that place. It had a draw, obviously. It was at the beach, and it encouraged people to take time from their busy lives to sit still and be together in one place. And I think that this will absolutely be that.
My grandparents were very fortunate to have a beach house, and they were also just very generous with who could come for how long. And so that beach house for us as a family, as an extended family even, had so many memories tied to it. And unfortunately, it is no longer in the family. It was wiped out by a hurricane years ago, and never rebuilt and sold ultimately.
Yeah, but I also think along those lines, that's part of also the drive that we had to build the place. We want it to be someplace that everybody would want to come gather, just because it's in a different, everybody we know is from somewhere other than Alaska. And, we've got a lot of friends and family they like doing outdoor stuff. And, there's no place better to do that than Alaska. So we didn't do this as an opportunity to go hide in the woods.
Yeah.
We kind of saw it as an opportunity as a draw, if you will, have folks come and experience it with us.
I think it'll totally be that.
I think Dad could live here full time.
Oh, he could totally live. So do you like the physicality of living in a place like this that requires a great deal of work to maintain? I personally do. I feel like that's why we live in a truck still. I like the logistics. I like that you have to pay attention to the details of life. You have to pay attention to how much water you have. You have to pay attention to how much power you have. Because I think that people get into autopilot in life, and I feel like you miss out on a lot when you do that. But I think that when life requires so much attention, isn't that, what is that called? Is that just presence, or like just like living in a more present manner? I personally really like it.
Well, you have more physical involvement in, well, it's like our place, our regular house in Florida. I mean, it's on autopilot.
Yeah.
We're not there right now, but all the, lights come on when, in the evening, and they turn off at a certain hour and all that other stuff. The water is always there. The power is always working. And if the power is not, it, comes back on in 2 minutes for some strange reason, a hurricane or what have you. But everything here only happens because we make it happen.
Right.
We're responsible for it. I do love that aspect of it. I think as you get older, it will be probably more difficult to keep up, but there's a lot of things we're doing to make the cabin more livable for those days. When, like, all the wood we just stacked from yesterday, that would be probably enough
Years
wood for a
worth
year
of
or two.
wood, yeah.
But I don't know. I find it. I like the challenge of it. I like being able to physically get out and do the stuff, make it happen, because nobody else is going to do it.
Yeah.
It's just not.
I also just like living closer with nature. I love that as we were going through the wood pile, we were discovering all sorts of bugs and funguses and paying attention to making sure that we weren't destroying the squirrel's home. I just really like being present to the lives that exist around you, not just human. I think it's fun.
Yeah, it's been fun watching the birds and the squirrels. They're like our little friends.
Yeah.
But I also just think it's kind of cool that so independently of each other, we have all, like, the whole family has fallen in love with Alaska through their own, like, we all...
In different ways.
In totally different ways.
We got here for different reasons.
We got here at different times for different reasons, have spent different amounts of time, but I feel like we've all kind of arrived at the same place, that this is a really special and very different environment.
Yeah, I look around and I'm like, how did we do this? I mean, honestly, in the moment, you don't think about how hard it really is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, I look at how tall this ceiling is, and it still scares me that we were on scaffolding up there.
It's cool,
put the
though.
tone groove up, yeah.
Yeah, and then that chimney stack.
But how gratifying is that to have... Well, this also just feels like a culmination of skills that you all have kind of put together over a long period of time. And this is what you can now do with those skills.
Yeah. So at the wedding...
More context here. We had all just come from my very dear friend's wedding in Palm Springs.
The man that was sitting to my right, he said, so is this what you all do? You always need a challenge, so what are you going to build next?
And you're like, oh, boy.
And I was like, I don't think we're building anything. And Dad's like, well, I want a yurt.
I didn't say I wanted a yurt. I said I want to make a small cabin, a completely dry cabin.
Yeah.
Maybe a yurt would be what it is.
Could start as a yurt.
Oh, yeah.
These things can evolve.
And I'm like, we just need to slow our roll a little bit. And
I think that you all need to have one trip here where it isn't with the sole purpose of like
having a task.
Working something off the list. Have at least one.
I think we're getting close to that.
Yeah.
I don't know that we're ever going to be there.
True.
Because we know we need to build a garage, a place to store the truck.
But there's also just upkeep. The environment is hard on.
Well, right. There's always something to do here.
Or maybe
always.
It's just it needs to be a trip that's long enough that you can have a project, you can finish that project, but then you can also...
Well, that's what I would say.
Enjoy.
We're at that place where we could come and, okay, we need to move the tankless hot water heater. But we could still go away for 2 or 3 days on some trip to see something we haven't
go up
seen.
to the North Slope or something like that.
Yeah, I look forward... I really, really want to do some trips up into the North Slope. And I think that what's so cool is like, this is about as far as civilization stretches.
There's only one road north of our cabin.
Yeah.
And it's
to the North
It's the
Slope.
Dalton Highway that goes to the North Slope.
Yeah. Because Owen and I didn't.
Place.
Yeah, we never got a chance to explore any of that part of Alaska. We were Fairbanks
we
was
haven't made it
as
that
far
far.
north, and then coastal Alaska.
We made it to the Fox water stations as far up the Dalton Highway as
I was going to say same.
Well, and I think this summer was the big push.
Yeah.
To get it all done.
Yeah.
So I'm happy about that.
Yeah, knock on wood, I'd say we're there.
Yeah, I do want to do the trim around the floor.
Oh, Mom. Bless you.
But it is something we could do, like
No,
at
totally.
night even. You don't have to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you got to cut it, so you got to
Right,
be
but you put
outside.
the saw on the deck.
Yeah.
We've done that.
Wow. See, always working through the next problem.
That's right. I stay awake at night thinking about it. So,
Well, I'm very proud of you all. It's really cool to see, and I'm sorry it took us this long to get
Yeah.
up here.
Yeah,
It's
well, we're glad
really,
you
Glad
really
you finally
cool.
got here, yeah.
Yeah.
Now you know where it is. Don't stay away so long.
Well, the thing is, like, we've
you all are the
been
closest
here.
ones. You all are the closest ones to the cabin when we all
Technically.
fly
That's
out.
technically.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
technically.
a weird thought.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Because it'd be nice having somebody check up on it.
Yeah, I would love to come back.
Or just use it. That's what it's here for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At 2:30 in the morning, my mom woke us up. There had been no chance of seeing the Aurora Borealis any of the previous nights. But this was our last night. And my mom told us that every night, if she wakes up in the middle of the night, she gets up and she pokes her head out the window to see if she can see the aurora. And finally, it happened. The aurora was out. We all threw on our clothes. We went outside, sub-freezing temperatures, and proceeded to watch 45 minutes of the most spectacular natural occurrence I have ever had the pleasure of seeing. So looking out into the valley behind my parents' cabin, it was at first kind of faint, low on the horizon, but still very distinctly visible to the naked eye, this kind of like green, purple-edged haze on the horizon. And over the course of like this first few minutes, I got the camera set up. We're kind of working on our exposure, making sure that we're picking up a good composition, that things are in focus. And as I'm getting very close to zeroing in on a good image, all of the sudden, the sky just erupts in green. And this is the first time we've seen the aurora before. We saw it in some crazy event all the way down in Joshua Tree, California. Very weird, very crazy. And it was faint, visible to the naked eye, but faint. But the colors were primarily purple, kind of like purple pink. But this was just neon green. And it was so bright and so visible. And it was just moving across the sky as if somebody was waving their arm. It was just moving so quickly. I guess I just assumed it would move slower, but it looked like a whip just kind of undulating in the sky. And I'm so happy that we had the camera out because this super vivid section was very quick. But we managed to get a couple of images, and it was funny because there are dog sled training camps on either side of my parents' property, and you can always tell when it's feeding time. They are just like, the dogs are going nuts. But we were kind of cheering into the sky, and then dogs from the dog sledding camps all started like howling into the night sky, and it just felt like we were all paying witness to this absolutely insane natural occurrence. I just am such a fan that nature has this ability to put on such a spectacular show, for lack of a better term, that you just can't help but stand there and take it in awe. It is without a doubt one of the most spectacular things I have ever had the pleasure of seeing. And it just felt so fitting that it was our last night. But kind of towards the tail end, we were all feeling very cold and tired. So we decided to retire, but a few of the last images I was able to capture, the fog had actually rolled back in to the area, and the aurora had almost no definition, but was just illuminating the fog in this intense neon green light. It was incredible. And Owen and I, we crawled back into bed, and as I closed my eyes, I could see the aurora there. And part of me hopes that maybe every time I close my eyes, the aurora will be there waiting for me. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to see some of the images that we took of the aurora that night, there is a blog post in the show notes. Go ahead and check that out. If there is one thing that people ask me more than anything else, it's how I store my clothes on the road. I have been using the same set of Eagle Creek packet cubes for the last 8.5 years. Since 1975, Eagle Creek has logged more miles and cleared customs more than anyone in the business. That hard-won insight is built into everything they make, from luggage to packing cubes and everything in between. In fact, I store my film in an Eagle Creek bag that was handed down to me from my grandmother, who used it in her travels over 20 years ago. And guess what? It's still going strong. Check them out at headnowhere.com/Eagle Creek. As longtime fans of Eagle Creek, we're proud to have them as a part of our everyday life, but also as a sponsor of Camp Nowhere. 1 trekking pole. 2 trekking pole. I was just setting up my trekking poles because we are about to go for a hike, and I had a thought. I love my trekking poles so much. Just setting them up gets me so stoked to be out on trail. And I think that just having the right piece of gear for the job just kind of does that to you. It makes you excited to get outside and do what you love. As a self-proclaimed gear nerd, I have made detailed gear guides plus some handy affiliate links and discount codes for brands that we personally know, love, and trust. If you decide to grab anything from those links or gear guides, it helps support all of our creative projects that we're working on, from films to podcasts and life on the move. So, if you are gearing up for your next adventure, check it out at headnowhere.com/gear, and thank you so much for helping us stay rolling. Okay, gotta run. This trail is not gonna hike itself.